No, we need to have some sort of like a map, direction, compass, that kind of things. Otherwise, you'll be just dropped in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and you just go figure type of situation. And sure, that initially you may be in survival mode, but eventually you gotta figure out where you're going. Otherwise, your journey would be over.
All right, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the RevAmp podcast. Really excited with today's guest to discuss, you know, some really challenging issues within the world of RevOps. When being treated as kind of a service function rather than kind of a strategic, um, proactive function. But before we jump into that, why don't you tell a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you're at today, um, for the folks at home?
Sure. Hi everyone. My name is Kanako, and I've been doing revenue operations, marketing operations, some flavor of operations touching GTM work for about 10 years already. I kind of started losing count. I started my career like many others in ops that I didn't really choose it. I just got into it by accident. And initially it was a bumpy road, but I loved it. I learned a lot. I got a lot of bruises, I guess. And yeah, I'm still here, loving it. Right now, I'm the senior revenue operations manager at the company called PathFactory. We offer marketing solutions, specifically providing the content intelligence, basically, um, yeah, optimizing the content journey for um, marketing, primary, and a little bit sales. So that's what I do.
Yeah. You'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, how many of our guests say the same thing, that they didn't go into revenue operations like that was their goal. Like they kind of somehow made their way into it and just kind of um, evolved into it. It's really interesting. I would imagine that nowadays, because over the last year or two, especially, it's kind of the fastest growing role. It's gotten more hype. I bet there are people today that are, kind of explicitly looking for revenue operations role, but especially people that have been in the space for a while, it's really a very similar story. Um, but getting into the meat of the article that I think is super interesting is, um, you were kind of talking about this frustration, and I think we could all maybe relate to it, where you're almost kind of treated as a glorified CRM admin, right? I need you to the point where I think you even mentioned that somebody asked you to change their password or something like that. Was kind of the role you played, as opposed to, well, I guess maybe the question is, you know, what is how has the role of RevOps kind of evolved from being, being the perceived kind of service desk, uh, you know, admin, to a strategic function? Like, what are the differences between the two?
I think this word evolved from, yeah, service function, order taker, more like a get things done type of approach. That was a starting point because, see, like somebody had to understand the system, for example. Somebody had to understand the data to put together a dashboard, and to put together a dashboard, to execute the campaigns, to run this playbook, that playbook, with the reps on the floor. Somebody has to do these activities, right? So that was probably the initial needs of this type of ops roles. But just getting things done haven't really moved the needle from in a bigger business sense, because you've seen so many companies where they're doing, say, random act of marketing or random act of prospecting, just sending out cold mails, emails. I mean, just send out this, just do the webinars. Like, it's not just do. Like, we put so much energy and effort and resources, and sometimes money too. A lot of times money too. But anyway, and do all these things, and we don't know where we are going. We don't know how these things are moving us to the next step. That's like kind of like driving for the sake of driving the car,
Yeah.
right? So that's probably the kind of like mindset shift or word shift happened in the ops, that no, we need to have some sort of like a map, direction, compass, that kind of things. Otherwise, you'll be just dropped in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and you just go figure type of situation. And sure, that initially you may be in survival mode, but eventually you gotta figure out where you're going. Otherwise, your journey would be over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the shift. But the challenge that I've seen, and that's I wrote up in the article because I was so like frustrated looking at many people's LinkedIn comments, etc., is that if the let's say users of RevOps talent, not the RevOps people themselves, but the users of such talent grew up in an environment where we need these people to get things done, they would treat us that way in the service function manner. And that's where the sort of like conflict or frustration type of things coming in. So I wrote that article not necessarily just to educate fellow RevOps folks. I mean, maybe some people got like aha moment. I don't know, fingers crossed, but more so for non-RevOps people that hey, we are not just password changer, we are not just dashboard builder, we are not just changing the price book because we are changing pricing structure once again, this year, and that I hope we are not changing it again this year. It's January, but anyhow, you get the point, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's where kind of like the discrepancy that I'm seeing, that we RevOps kind of like I kind of come from the marketing, so I see it this way, that RevOps need to kind of like market the way we want to be, and that article was well my tiny effort to do.
Yeah. I think that's a great insight because, I think people that come into a RevOps role that are more, um, let's say, analytical and less kind of uh, verbal, or so their skills are much more kind of in numbers than people, let's say something like that, often do find that challenge, right, where they're not able to kind of convey the value that they can bring, or get kind of the mutual empathy between their end users, for their place in the role. And there is, I think, a problem of marketing there. Um, and um, one of the things I took from your article, the thing that popped in my head a lot was kind of, it's almost like this reactive versus proactive, right? So reactive, you kind of get people from every department, hey, I need this field, I need that field, I need to do this and that, without really the big picture view that, they only see their slice of the pie and this person only sees, but RevOps kind of has the opportunity to see the whole pie and what impact your slice is going to have on the whole thing. And if you're just kind of reactive and kind of checking off tickets and doing whatever you're told without any concern about the downstream impacts, there's going to be a huge amount of kind of tech debt that accumulates. Whereas I think the proactive approach, which is kind of the opposite, is to kind of set out a broader picture and kind of get everyone on board about this vision, how it impacts their slice, but also the bigger pie. Um, but I would imagine that's tough if you walk into an organization where the perception is that you are kind of the IT desk for fixing fields in the CRM.
Right. So yeah, one of the few advices I give to people whenever someone reaches out to me about like getting into RevOps, or getting the new gig in the RevOps world, is that really understand what kind of RevOps environment you want to be, or you would thrive, and understand what kind of environment you're working in. Yeah,
Hmm.
this is one of the things I keep telling people over and over, is that yes, first of all, the understanding, or let's say definition. Ops people like to talk about definition, by the way, but the definition of RevOps is still very, you know, undefined.
Very poorly defined. You ask two
Yeah,
people, you'll get three different definitions.
exactly. Yeah, in someone's mind, it may be just sales ops with a little bit understanding in other areas. Like, sure, that may be the needs of that company. While in other company, this RevOps role may require really full, deep understanding across journey. That's a two completely different kind of things, right? So I always ask, what kind of environment you want to be in, and are you working in? And of course, we cannot completely, alleviate the potential, mismatch or conflict. Things change, especially in a startup, like, the hiring manager may leave the company. I've had that kind of challenge all the time. And then the whole, dynamics and environment changes. So it's not that we can do whole due diligence and draw a happy path for ourselves for so long, but at least when you are walking into the door, you can do some level of due diligence to understand where you can shine, and is this the place you can shine. Yeah. So for that matter, yes, RevOps function is not the service function, but I also don't want to say or put the broad statement that RevOps people or a person should not be this that kind of service function type person. There could be a place for them. I happen to be the places that are not like that, or the needs the needs of the companies I worked for are not like that. But it's not like my experience, my background, where I can thrive is applicable for everyone. Not like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some kind of low-hanging fruit that someone stepping into a role, maybe in a new company, in an organization, where it could set the tone for establishing yourself as a more proactive, I think you used the metaphor about a symphony orchestra. So kind of an
Mhm.
orchestrator as opposed to, an order taker. Maybe not trying to boil the whole ocean, but is there kind of an initial project or something that you could kind of set out that sets the tone across the organization that highlights the value you could bring within that role as opposed to just kind of making somebody's happy meal and asking if they want fries with that.
Yeah, the couple actions I take is I usually ask, even during the interview process, that what are the major initiatives that you wish for the person in this role to take on? Yeah, and I use initiatives, not even project initiatives. Yeah, because that sounds like a bigger picture thing. I don't know. That's my preferred word choice. Yeah, and and of course, sometimes like all like these initiatives may be like super tiny things, but then I start drilling in like why these are the initiatives for you? What are the bigger picture? And start digging in. And if you ask that kind of questions ahead of time, people will start, receiving the signal that, oh, this person has, basically understanding in these things from the strategic perspective. It's not just like go get things done type of things. So at least I'm trying to signal that way. Some people take it positively, others may not take it positively. That's out of my control, but that's how I do kind of like management, so to speak. Another thing is, um, you just said low hanging fruits, and I like that concept, but I try not to overuse it. Because low hanging fruits tends to be, literally low hanging fruits, just pick that apple there, right? That's like, that tends to be like more task driven or ticket
Mm.
driven. Oh, let's go fix this part of the report. Let's go fix this part of the dashboard. And then, sure, I can just keep digging why and why and why behind that apple hanging there. But yeah, if the low hanging fruits, especially like there are like a huge list of it, like asking for that could be already a little bit of dumpster fire situation for you. And also, having that presented to you may set a little bit of not so right expectation that these are low hanging fruits you can just knock off, right? Like, yeah, but they are low hanging fruits and potentially put in a backlog or haven't been touched. There's a reason for that too.
Yeah.
So I try to be kind of like a careful to pick the right word to signal like I want to focus on initiatives. I want to focus on big rocks. I want to do the project, not just, well, let's fix this form, let's fix this part of the report. Let's
Right.
fix part of the, pricing mechanism. Like, yeah, I know troubleshooting is inevitable in this role, but I try not to bring that up upfront.
Yeah. It's almost like, you want to go one level above the low hanging fruit, right? What are the bigger things that are causing there to be,
Mm,
those low hanging fruit? Is there some sort of systemic thing that isn't done or is missing or needs to be relooked at that is causing all these other issues, and
mm.
focus on those? So kind of,
Yeah,
uh, you know, working at the source of the problem as opposed to the outcomes of a bad system or approach.
yeah.
Um,
I sometimes use this analogy. I don't know if this makes sense, but pulling the potato chain. I don't know if you've done farming, but I think this is how it works under the ground. There's a potato, and the potato are kind of like connected to each other. So when you pull the string, you get potato, potato, potato coming out.
mhm,
You may see like one potato, and low hanging potato is not hanging, but you get that. No, low hanging potato, and you pull it. There are like additional problems that relate it, and like I want to fix this, but then I got touch this, I got that, touch that, touch that, touch that. Like that's a project size work.
right.
It's no longer low hanging fruits. Now the question is, does this new discovered program trump the existing priority? Well, okay, what is the priority? Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to the metaphor that you used about the kind of the symphony orchestra,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and being a conductor,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, what is an organization that is kind of in harmony and has a conductor and playing notes together to for a symphony? What does that look like as opposed to, everybody kind of doing their own guitar solo at the same time? Like,
I
again,
love
I'm not,
that.
I don't listen, I don't really listen to classical music, but um, what does it look like when it's this well-oiled machine where all the different parts are kind of working in harmony, and there's a conductor, you kind of ensuring that no one's stepping on anyone's toes? Like, what does that kind of ideal state look like, as opposed to kind of the other state, where that there is no conductor?
Yeah, it's difficult to explain. That's why we pulled up analogy, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. In my opinion, the well-oiled machine would be that I think each team knows what others are doing. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be in super nitty gritty that oh yeah, marketing team is running like these many awesome ads on the LinkedIn. Like I don't know, sales doesn't have to know that level of details. But for example, if it's marketing campaign, we should be informing sales, right? And then it's not just like we are launching awesome campaign. These are collaterals. Like what will be the impact to your word? Yeah, same kind of things. Like it's more like being mindful each other that my work impacts somebody else, and is it good impact or not so good impact?
Yeah,
Yeah. If I don't track this type of data during the sales journey as asked, what will be the consequence of it? What would be the challenge cause for other people? And I'm not really expecting every single person to really have that kind of like mindfulness happening, but like kind of like educating and training. And here's how things are connected. Here's how your good work impact others' good work. Is to me like well-oiled machine, and be your conductor. Performing the awesome orchestra. Yeah,
yeah,
fun
yeah.
fact, I haven't played in orchestra.
You did,
I,
or did
I've
you
been a
have it?
pianist, so but I
Oh
have
wow.
a degree, so I can talk about it. Anyhow,
I I play guitar, but not well. So,
I don't play guitar either. I did drums.
So in the again going back to the article, you kind of outlined four principles about kind of making that how to make that shift um, to from the kind of service desk to being a more of the strategic role. The first one was kind of looking for the leading indicators before they become emergencies. So having sort of kind of early warning signal,
Mm-hmm.
um, building clear processes that enable teams to be able to self-serve so that you don't have to be, that facilitator of every little thing, creating space for strategic work and setting boundaries and establishing a cadence for handling those kind of quick fixes. So how did you come to identify those four principles? Was it just kind of blood, sweat, and tears learned over time? Has it been an evolution? Like, how did you come to to those four?
Yeah. Well, of course, I didn't get that kind of enlightenment from the get go. I wish I had, but the life is not that easy. Yeah, and as I said, I've been bruised from so many incident experience and road accident, kind of. Yeah, but a lot of things are coming here based on my experience, right? Like, for example, I tend to go back to the marketing example because that's where I'm coming from, but this should be applicable to sales, CS, what have you. But we launch something,
Hmm.
right? Like, say, marketing campaign, or maybe the sales outbound initiative, or maybe CS playbook, whatever. And after we run it, we come back to the ops saying, can you pull the performance data? What is that if we don't define it before we launch it?
Right.
Here's a super a specific example. I'm pretty sure if they are listening to this, like they would probably laugh at me, like, I remember this. We launched a certain campaign and there was no like goal defined. So I pressed the team so many times. What's the goal? What's the goal? What's the time frame? What's the number? That kind of things. Because they kept coming back saying, well, thank God we had this conversation before lunch still, but I've had this kind of conversation after lunch and I had to like scramble, like, how can I even put together the data that is not existent? But same deal, right? And I pressed the team so many times. And eventually I said, okay, let me pull some random number. If we can close one deal by the end of the year with this ACB, one deal, so ACB meaning ARR, do you think do you think we can declare success of the campaign? And they said, no. All right. What if we set the goal 100 deals ACV this much by end of so and so time frame? Do you think this is success? Like, yes, but that's too high bar. Like, see, like, so where we draw the line, like where we set the goal and how we want to track it, and we need
Yeah.
to set up things accordingly. Otherwise, we don't want to have data. Even if like we have the all awesome like ChatGPT whatnot to deal with unstructured data, if we are talking about non-existent data,
Right.
we we don't want to we don't want to be able to pull that.
Right.
That's one of these like proactiveness and also putting together process things, because I fall into that trap so many times because I didn't ask ahead. I wasn't proactive enough. Things happen, and after the fact, on my back foot, I was asked to figure out how. Yeah. So yeah, as you asked, I got bruised
Yeah.
so many times,
Right.
and yeah, I think I have probably a few more principles to pull from my previous experiences, but to some
Are there
extent,
more that you would add to that list?
um, I think those are the main ones. Still, there are a little bit
Hmm.
of like minor variation of it, but pretty much it. Basically,
Yeah.
be proactive, set up process, and process not just for others but for yourself too, because that helps us to set the boundary. Otherwise, again, we tend to fall back into service function mode. And by the way, being in a service function mode sometimes feels great. We
Yeah.
feel like we got this many things done. But wait a second, how do we move the needle? Do we go anywhere by doing these things? Are we doing the work for the sake of feeling good? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes we need it. We need that kind of feeling. I get that. But if that's like everyday thing, every week thing, every month thing, is it really right? Am I adding the value to the org?
Yeah. I you mentioned ChatGPT, and I know this is a bit of a curveball, but it wouldn't be a podcast really without just talking about it somewhat.
Uh-uh.
But I'm just endlessly fascinated, not just by AI in general, but it feels like RevOps in particular is ripe for disruption in a good way, I think, with AI, though I don't see it having manifested yet. But I don't know if you are of the same mind, but in the coming few years, do you see AI playing a bigger role in RevOps, kind of, and what do you think that might look like?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. We probably need another episode, right?
Yeah.
And I may not be even the right person. Um, my hunch is, and this is like generally speaking, like not just the RevOps whatnot, but generally speaking, I think it's more about the world going into like more bigger chasm between the people who can leverage this kind of technology versus not. That's
Hmm.
definitely one. And then leverage means probably two things. One is more like technical side of how we can set up the processes and technology behind it to make this new technology usable. That's definitely one area. The other area is more on the end user skill set. Yeah, like you've seen so many articles talking about how to do the prompting. That
Yeah.
makes me think like, oh, we need to know how to use this tool too. It's not gonna be like having conversation like this and both of us like get it type of things. We need to have a skill. Well, even in the human communication, we say we need to have communication skill, but seems like slightly different communication skills, so to speak, we need to have. So those are the kind of like two skill sets I think we need to have to be on one. I don't want to divide the world, but sort of like one side of the spectrum in general. That's one thing I've been thinking. The other side, the other one that I've been thinking, especially in the RevOps world, is well, I don't know how much of these promises will be really real in the short, you know, term, but let's say more technical side. These AI may prom AI selling companies actually, not AI. AI doesn't make a promise, right? AI selling companies may make a promise that, hey, our solution will help you to build automations much faster. Great on the surface, but in reality, we need to know much more contextual details behind the scene. Yeah, it's kind
Yeah.
of I kind of think like again, like coming from marketing, this was a common thing, and I really suck at it. Honestly, is that working with say design agency. Design is very fluid. It's not one zero word like dealing with CRM, right? Yeah, the requester needs to be able to articulate what goes into it and how things needs to get done to some degree if needed, right? If we cannot articulate that piece when even setting up AI solution for internal use or external use, what have you, it's not gonna fly. It's gonna take more and more time. And that piece is like companies are saying like, oh, this year will be easy, but I'm not really, I don't know, buying it yet. I kind of feel like it's more like a training the intern or
Yeah.
like working with the brand the agencies that. we just brought in brand new, we have to train them, sort of like give them a context, that kind of things, so they are up to speed. So it's not like bringing in the tool and magically the world would be better price. Not gonna be like that.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of review uh, about kind of what we covered um, for the folks at home and just for me to kind of digest it. I think that a lot of folks in the RevOps space get into this conundrum where they end up falling into this service role, right? They're just kind of people send them tasks and they do it, and some, like you said, it's almost gamified. It's reinforcing. You're like check check, and there's it feels good,
Yeah.
but you're almost kind of running in place, right? You're not really dealing with systemic issues. There's no growth happening, and so you know there really needs to be a proactive measure, establish these kind of four principles that you outlined early on, to give space for some of those kind of ad hoc tasks that are needed, but also, and allow a system for folks to kind of self-serve, but also, kind of have a broader picture and be more strategic about larger projects or initiatives, as you called it. Um, and I think that, as a as a rubric, it's that's something that I think a lot of folks at home uh, maybe could put into action. So, before we close things up, is there anything else that you'd want to add to that? Anything I missed there?
I think at the end of the day, again, the definition of RevOps is still fluid, and I don't know if you've come across this, but there is seemingly new title called GTM engineer, and I'm
I'm
not.
I'm convinced somebody seeded this conversation about a GTM engineer, and it's an inorganic thing because it came out of nowhere. It was like a bunch of people talking about it, and then
Mm,
yeah, it was strange.
yeah, so yeah, there are new things always popping up. At the end of the day, it comes down to really having a good understanding of what you want to do, what you can do, and where you can like shine and be happy. Yeah, another thing that I learned sort of by publishing these newsletter, it's pretty much more like a brain dump I'm doing though, is that sometimes I get comment that, oh, that's only the startup problem, or like that's only the tech problem, that tech industry problem, and they may be right, but that's only my experience and where they are. I found being happy, and here is the frustration I feel, even though I'm in a really happy place, right? So the things are different for everyone at the end of the day. And if we can just pick nuggets from my brain dump here and there, that would be great. If not, move on and you can just build your own rubric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a great place to end things. And before we go, maybe you can tell the folks at home where they can learn more about you and maybe read some of those brain dumps that you're talking about, where they could find that. Now's the time to let them know.
Yeah, sure. Probably the LinkedIn is the easiest way to catch me. I I'm trying to publish these brain dump newsletter every other week right now. And and also I tend to comment others posts a lot, so you probably come across my name here and there. But that's
Yeah.
probably the easiest way to find me.
We'll include a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes
Thank you.
for the folks folks at home. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it. And have a great day.
Yeah.